Like you're a farmer in Montana with a horse. Your horse can be fast, right? But it can never become a thoroughbred because it doesn't have the genetics.
Correct. You would not be able to do that. I mean, you could race a horse against other farms and other things, but when it comes to official thoroughbred horse racing in the world, they have to be purely thoroughbred. At least for the last 200 years, the thoroughbred has stuck with only thoroughbreds being bred to thoroughbreds, and they have to have that lineage and nothing else.
Today's guest is Frankie Lovato Jr. He's a former professional jockey whose career spanned decades at some of the highest levels of horse racing. Over the course of his career, he rode more than 15,000 races, won over 1,600 times, and in 1980 earned the prestigious Eclipse Award for Outstanding Apprentice Jockey, one of the highest honors in American horse racing. Beyond his accomplishments on the track, Frankie has also become well known as an educator and ambassador to the sport, with a gift for explaining horse racing in a way both newcomers and lifelong fans can appreciate. In this conversation, we explore the world of horse racing from the ground up. We start at breeders, owners, trainers, jockeys, the different types of horses, the different types of races, the culture of the track, and what makes this sport so fascinating to the people inside of it. We also dive into Frank's personal story, how he became a jockey, the highs and dangers of racing, memorable wins from his career, and the mindset it takes to compete in one of the most physically and mentally demanding sports in the world. With that, here's my interview with Frankie Lovato Jr. What made you decide to become a jockey? Why did you want to become a jockey in the first place?
You know that I mentioned my dad was a jockey, but I have older siblings, and none of them had interest in racing or horses. I was the youngest of 4 kids. I was obsessed with it. I just could not. I remember my dad. I tagged along with him since I was 3 years old. I wanted to go to the racetrack with him. I wanted to be at the barn with the horses, and I wanted to be a jockey before I even understood it. And I can remember my mother, um, at like 4 years old, saying, "Are you sure?" She really didn't want me to be a jockey because it's dangerous. And I was like, "No, that's all I want." That's you couldn't. I went through my entire childhood just wanting to be a jockey, and every book report I ever did, anything I ever did in school, my every notebook I ever had pictures of horses and jockeys, and so I was born to do it and obsessed with it,
Wow.
and I did it.
Do you remember the first time you rode a horse?
I do. I mean, I was probably only 2 or 3 years old, but I can remember the first time I sat on a horse. Yeah, yeah, and then I wasn't really as when you're a jockey, racetracks are built around the suburbs and city areas, where the grandstands and the people can come, and that's where not built out in the country and farms. So it, I didn't grow up on a horse farm. I grew up in the suburbs. So my bicycle was my horse. I didn't get to go and ride like most kids had ponies and stuff. Um, so that part was frustrating for me. I could go to the track with my dad in the mornings, and they have the stable ponies, which are they're full size horses. We call them ponies. Full size horses that will lead the horses, the thoroughbreds. You'll see them for the races, going to the starting gates for the warm up, prep to the races. That's just helped them manage some of the thoroughbreds that a jockey themselves may not be able to control, or accompany them or help them be relaxed. And it's just a common thing you'll see in horse racing. But there'll be stable ponies, and I would go in the mornings with my dad, and they'd let me just ride around the barn. I couldn't go fast or I couldn't do anything. I just got to sit there at a walk and just walk around the barn with the other horses, and that was a big deal to me. But I was so obsessed with it that I left home. I was only 14 years old, and against my mother and father's wishes, I needed to get to a horse farm where I could start training to be a jockey, and that's what I did when I was 14 years old. That's when I moved to Ocala, Florida, and worked on a horse farm and started getting my skills started in riding.
And I think, when you first started out, the first few years, you were pretty good, right? I mean, I read that you won a pretty prestigious award right off the bat.
Yeah, so I won my very first year of riding. I started racing professionally at my later part of 16 years old. And so that first year, I had won. I'd won over 300 races, but um, I won the Eclipse Award, which is the most prestigious award you can win in horse racing, and as the leading apprentice of North America, and I'm very proud of that. Um, and being an apprentice, it's kind of like winning the Heisman Trophy, for example. It's just it's such an honor to do that, and I was competing against many other very good apprentice jockeys. Um, which to explain an apprentice jockey, that's something we might get into deeper, but um, as an apprentice jockey, you're riding against experienced jockeys. So to get started, what the racing here in America, what racing does for you, they give you what they call a weight allowance, which is the assigned weight that the horse is given for a horse race. An apprentice jockey, they'll take 10 pounds off, or they'll take 7 pounds off, or they'll take 5 pounds off, depending on the state. And that gives a beginner, an apprentice, uh, the opportunity to get started. And trainers and owners, it's an incentive. Well, if my horse will carry 110 instead of 115 pounds for this race, that's an advantage to them. And that's why they would give you that opportunity. So I was competing against some of the best riders in America and holding my own. And I had my weight allowance, which was great. But I was winning. I was even winning races that didn't. It's a little complicated, but some of the major stakes races, they don't give you that weight allowance. So I was getting to ride it even in those races and winning them, which was it's exceptional for an apprentice to be able to ride at that level. And so I did. And those were my first couple of years of racing. Um, I was there was a very good chance that there was going to be many Kentucky Derby winners and Preakness and Belmont Stakes winners and Breeders' Cups, and um, it looked like that was poised to be one of the new top riders in America. But in 1981, after my apprentice year, I badly got hurt and fractured my leg, and that my whole momentum, everything I had going at that time, just kind of fell apart and never quite recovered from that.
Mm. Yeah, I heard about that you think you were, just right out the gate, right after the year after or so after the award that happened to you.
Yeah.
And then I think you invented something that, maybe we can talk about later, but the equicizer that,
Yeah.
from that, which a lot of people still use today and you still make today.
That's yeah, that strangely enough, that may be my legacy, is the equicizer, because from that racing accident, when I had to go through the rehab I had to go through, um, I created something as a rehabilitation tool, which became the equicizer, and it's become um, a staple in horse racing, but also it's very popular for equine assisted type therapies where people use horses as a therapy, therapeutic riding programs, and also all types of riders. They also sustain injuries. They also need to practice through skills, and fitness is a big part of it. So it turns out that I created something from that racing accident that has turned into my life and my legacy.
Mm.
Strangely
And
enough.
and we should say for people, I saw a picture of it, but it's like a horse. It's like a fake horse in a way that you can sit on with a head, and you can practice the movements like if you were on a horse, and get the exercise of riding without actually being on a horse. That's kind of how I would describe it.
Yep. Yep. It gives you the essentials. It gives you the barrel of a horse that you could saddle or ride bareback. It gives you a neck and head, and the movement is enough. It's I won't call it a complete simulation because that would cost a fortune. I tried to keep it a very simple concept and idea. When I made my first horse, I was still on crutches, so I was able to delicately, uh, instead of going to the gym or to the pool or to the rehab center, I could do all these little things on my little wooden horse that was able to bring back some of my what I needed to ride horses, not to ride a bicycle, not to swim in a pool, to ride a horse. So that's what the equicizer does.
Yeah, and from what I hear, it helps a lot of people. It's been helping a lot of people. I wanted to go over an overview of horse racing. I have some topics that I want to go over. I want to go over breeders, then it will move to owners of the horses, trainers, and breed, and then jockeys, and some information in there as well. So, who are breeders? Right? What do they do in horse racing? Who are breeders? What do they do? Why are they important in the sport? Give like an overview for someone that doesn't know. What are breeders? What are stud farms? What are they
Sure.
doing at these places?
Sure. So, my expertise as a jockey is limited, but I have enough. I have enough history, starting out as a kid, working on a farm. Some farms have various. Uh, they may have a series of training, breeding, um, the whole thing, and then others will be specific. So, to break down, when I was a kid and I started working on the horse farm, we had we had brood mares. We didn't have a stallion on the farm, um, but then we had training. So we had babies. So we had mamas and babies, and then we had horses in training. We had horses that were not yet in training, that were what we call yearlings, which are just coming into 1 year of age, where they need to be saddle broke and start the regimen of learning how to get into the training aspect of it. And then we had some turnouts and retirees. Um, so there was that's a big that was a vast operation of what we did. If we had a mare, or we'll call them a brood mare, which is an older female, her purpose is to now make babies. Um, she'll be called a brood mare, and we would take her to a stud farm, or to a farm that maybe they also had mares and studs, but they kept them separate. But we would take them to a certain stallion, a stud farm, and breed them, and then bring them back home. And hopefully you get them pregnant. Or they'll carry a foal, and then it starts all over again. They have a baby. The baby becomes a yearling. Then the yearling becomes saddle broke, and then goes into training. So that's kind of the process. Some of the bigger farms, like or like a breeder, they may not have training. They may not have a stallion. They just maybe it's a family that has a farm, and they have three mares, and every year they breed them with the idea of either selling the babies or racing them. It's just another scenario. There's so many scenarios that this could take, but they would they would pick a stallion. It may not be the same stallion every year. They may decide, well, my mare here, she had a lot of speed when she was a racehorse. We're going to breed it to a stallion that has a good record of running longer distances, or is better running on the turf than the dirt. So it gets complicated. So, it's kind of a fun thing to do, to breed your own babies and maybe race them yourself, see how they do. There's a lot of reward there, of course. And then some people will do it with just the idea of to breed, have the baby, and sell the baby.
And then when let's say a baby is born and it's gonna be sold to an owner, someone's gonna buy that that horse. Is that is that done like, walk me through the process there. Is that done, like, right off the bat? I'm assuming it's not right off the bat, but does it take, like, a year, or you wait till it's 2 years?
Yeah, it'll all be different. There's so many different scenarios. Just to give you one scenario, there might be a case where a breeder makes a deal to breed to a stallion. Stallions, they have to have they have to have a great race record. They have to have proven that they're a great racehorse, and they want to pass that on, that greatness. So you just don't breed to any stallion, and it would just be a total waste of time. So they're constantly, if they like this stallion, they might make a deal with those stallions with that stallion or those people. Hey, if I can breed to your stallion instead of paying you the stud fee, maybe I keep the first baby and then we breed them back to you and you get the second baby. Because I think a wheel and deal with things like that all day long. But then there's other cases where they'll breed them and they'll put them through the sales, and that's probably where they'll probably get the best bang for their buck if they have a nice mare. Maybe she had a very nice race record, and they breed it to a stallion that also had a nice race record, and now that baby automatically, just because of the bloodlines, is at value, and and then they could put that through the sales, and they'll bid, and they might get, they might get a lot of money for that baby. To make it more interesting, maybe that mare had a baby the year before or 2 years before that also became a successful racehorse. Then it's like the stock market. That baby, before it's even born, has already, the value has already gone up. So that's where they get into the sales and buying and selling and wheeling and dealing, and it's quite interesting. It's quite fascinating.
I think that's
Constantly
a
moving.
constantly moving, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds really, like there's so many different variables to that. You can sell a horse, you can, like you can say you get the I get the first one, you get the second one. Genetics have so much to do with it. I think it's a good segue into the next portion. So, after breeders come owners. Who can buy these horses, right? A lot of there are different types of people that can buy, think like a wealthy someone that's into horse racing and is very wealthy can purchase it. Syndicates, I think, can also purchase
Yeah.
these horses. What's the next step in that process where someone starts to own the horse?
Yeah, so the breeders, they like I mentioned, they may hang on to it with the intention of racing their own babies, as they grow older. But there's others that are in it for, it's a business. They breed the mares, they have the babies, um, and then they may go through these sales, um, and then the people that would be buying them, um, that could also, there's variables there. So there might be a guy that he just hit the lottery, say for example, and he loves horse racing, always wanted to own a racehorse. And so how does he go about this? He probably finds somebody, which could be a bloodstock agent, does some research and knows somebody. But a bloodstock agent is somebody that's in the game. Like, they're almost like a stockbroker. These guys, they're in the game. They're watching everything. They're watching horses that are going to be running next week. That's a half sister or half brother to this horse that this mare is about to have a baby. So um, they'll go to these sales. They'll have the sales catalogs. They'll have all the bloodlines, and so they have this guy that wants to invest into a racehorse. He might say, "Here you go. I like this one. Hip number 353 out of Secretariat." And like, so I mean, by Secretariat, sorry. That I made a big mistake, because sires you would say by and mares would be out of. So
Oh.
Again, um, so yeah, that's how an owner can get in. But there's also syndicates where a guy, maybe he didn't hit the lottery, but maybe he had a good year. and he loves horse racing, wants to get in the game, he can get into these syndicates where these partnerships where the risk is low because he's not going to invest as much money into one horse. There might be 30 people invested into one horse. And that's a way to get into the game and have some fun with minimum risk. So if the horse does not do well or if something goes wrong, you're not you don't take a big loss.
Do these owners, like, let's say that it's a one person buys the horse. Do they have, I mean, what if they don't have a farm? They basically have them at a stable, someone's stable, and they rent that
Yeah.
out? Is that kinda how that works?
Yeah, so, like, as I mentioned, when I was a kid and I went to work on the farm, we did a little bit of everything. Um, my the farm owner didn't own any of those horses. He may have had 1 or 2 of his own interest, but he had various owners that housed their mares there, or had their yearlings in training there, or had a horse that was, on it coming off a layoff that maybe raced and had a small injury, rested on the farm, got turned out, got some rest, and is going back into training. So that's one scenario. Um, but a lot of owners, there's farms. Let's say a famous farm like Calumet Farm in Lexington, Kentucky. They have fields and pastures and barns just for the brood mares, and they're not all owned by Calumet Farm. There may be several owners, several partnerships that they keep their mares there at that farm, and that farm will manage the whole process and routine. Those are some of the big players in the game that would do that sort of thing. More the small breeders, the private ones, they may have a little farm with 5 acres. They keep their mares out, and as I mentioned earlier, when that time comes up during breeding season, they try to get them bred to a stallion, um, somewhere that would make sense for them for their investment.
Yeah, yeah. So the breeders, the owners, and then I think the next part I wanna talk about is the trainers, right? I think this is where the core of the horse is taken care of, right? They train the horse. Most of the horse's progressive life in those years is spent with a trainer who's in charge of keeping it healthy, getting it strong, exercising it, making sure the vet
Yeah.
it gets its vet appointments. Take me through that part of horse racing.
So as mentioned, like going back to, I'll use the farm I started out on, for example. Um, the owner of that farm, he managed all the horses of different kinds. So we had the mares, we had the babies, then we had the horses in training. Once those horses were to the point they were ready to go to the racetrack, so my farm owner could be considered a trainer as well, but he did everything. But once they're ready to go to the racetrack, and they won't go to the racetrack until they're they won't waste anybody's time. Like they won't go to the racetrack when they're still 6 months from ever running in a race. They'll go to the racetrack for that point to continue with their serious training and preparation for racing. And those trainers that usually work the racetracks, they don't do the farm thing. They usually are there with a stable of horses, um, and they maybe have various owners. And they are, like as you mentioned, they're responsible for the care. They manage that barn. They manage the grooms, the hot walkers, the hay they eat, the grain they eat, their regiment, their whole thing, their total care and their training. So the trainers will be making the decisions on a day by day basis of the care of that horse, including their training regiment, whichever that may be, and then also picking out races for that horse, that would be appropriate, what his decisions would be. For example, a horse that let's say it's a young horse that's going to be his first race. He's gonna pick out a race that would be suitable, he or she feels, that would be a good place to start this horse, and discuss it with the owner, they'll come to an agreement in general, is consensus. They'll come to an agreement, and the trainer will be the one that entered that horse into that race. Um, so, yeah, so the trainer becomes a very important part of the total care of that horse at that point, making all the decisions.
Yeah, so they seem like they're the overseer of, like, they're the big picture. They're like the boss in that situation. But you also mentioned I wanted to talk about some of the jobs within that this realm. So the hot walkers, exercise riders. Can you give me some of the big jobs that
Sure.
are involved in horse racing? I think one of the big ones is like a groom. Go ahead and tell me that.
Well, the groom is probably going to be is the probably the most important because in a standard stable setting at a racetrack with a trainer, a groom may handle on average 4 horses at a time, and the groom is responsible for that horse's care in totality. So the grooms get there sometimes 4:30 in the morning, um, and what they'll do. Um, not everyone, but like let's say they'll take the horse's temperature. They'll pull their feed tub. They'll give them their morning breakfast. They'll make sure their hay rack is full. Um, they'll take the horse's temperature. Is pretty common. The horse is showing a little bit of a fever or something, or something's just a little bit off. Um, they'll make sure the trainer knows that because that could change their training regimen for that day. Um, they'll also many horses on the racetrack will get bandaged regardless if they need it or not, which means they wrap their legs, even if they don't have any sort of ailment, or it's for protection. It's to keep them as healthy and sound as possible. And horses tend to hurt themselves. So even in just a stall by themselves, they might do something, they might roll or hit the wall or do something or kick. Grooms will pull their bandages, check their legs, check their feet. They give them a complete once over. They'll brush them down at a racetrack. Since all horses don't go training at one time out of a barn, we have sets. So um, a groom will know. Well, my horse. Well, he may have 4 horses as mentioned, but this horse is going out in the second set, so he has to be ready to be saddled and prepared at let's say it's by 6 a.m. that morning, and he'll have to do that for all his horses. And so they're brushed down. He has them saddled, prepared, bridled, and then when that set is ready to go, the groom will bring the horse out of the stall, and that's when the exercise rider will mount on the horse and get ready to go out to the track. During that time, the groom usually completely cleans the stall and puts down fresh bedding. Again, make sure their hay rack, fresh water, is ready for them when they come back to stall after their exercise, and that's where a hot walker plays a role. Some of the smaller tracks will use hot walking machines, which is it's a machine basically that you can snap the halter onto the horse onto it, and they'll actually walk in a circle with the machine. um, yeah, it's just it works. But some of the bigger track, or all the bigger trackers, say use hot walkers, which these are people that will lead the horse around the barn for 30 minutes, on average of 30 minutes at a time, until they cool off. They like after a horse exercises, they generally get bathed, depending on the time of year. They'll generally get bathed, and then the hot walker will walk them and cool them out for that average of 30 minutes until they're nice and relaxed. They had enough water, and then they return to their stall to just relax and have their hay.
So
Uh,
so the hot walker, they're really cooling them down. Is that what they mean? And they're not the hot walker
yeah,
is not a man or a woman holding the walking on the ground, walking the horse. They're riding the horse as
no,
it
no,
walks?
they're walking. They're walking. We have a lead shank, and we'll attach it to the halter, and they'll actually walk them around the barn. And we turning left, we call them like turning left engineers. hot walkers. So they just go around the we call it a shed row, which is generally outside of the stalls and it's under a roof, most times. And sometimes you'll see some racetracks that'll have a walking ring outside. But the grooms just walk in circles, and a barn may be, let's say 200 yards all the way around the barn. They may go around and around and around for that 30 minutes until that horse is nice and cool out and had a drink. It's got a fresh water bucket to drink out of if he wants, she wants, and then until they're all cooled down. Just like if you're an athlete and you exercise, you just don't sit down on the couch. You kind of walk it off, let your heart rate go down, relax. That's kind of the process of what they do with racehorses after they exercise.
So you have the groom, the hot walker. Are there other big jobs? The exercise rider, what does the exercise rider do?
So the exercise rider, his job is once the groom has the horse ready, takes the horse to the track, and under the trainer's instructions, the trainer will tell that exercise rider what he wants, and sometimes it's a jockey. But will most cases, trainers will have exercise riders that could be on payroll or they know those horses on a day to day exercise regimen. They'll go out to the track, follow the trainer's instructions, what they want that horse to do that day, and then they bring them back to the barn, and then they unmount and they get on the next horse. Um, and that's more or less the routine. So an exercise rider may be getting on the same horses every day for that trainer in most cases. And a jockey will be used on occasion, especially for important workouts. The trainer may request a jockey to do that workout, which means so most horses, their training is very reserved. So they'll go out to the track, they'll do a lot of jogging, some light, easy galloping. It may be uh, some horses, depending on that type of horse and what type of race they're preparing for, they may only jog a half a mile and a slow gallop for a mile, and then that's all they do, and they go back to the barn. When they're not so fit, that could be a lot. Once they're fit, that's not so much. Just enough to keep them sound and happy and full of themselves. They once they get fit, they feel pretty good. Um, Thoroughbreds generally were a little spunky, but especially once they get horse racing fit. So the exercise rider brings them back to the barn. They get on the next horse until training is done for the day, and that's basically the exercise rider's job during training hours. After that, they're not really part of the rest of the day of the regiment. It's more or less the groom will take care of the horse throughout the entire day until feed time in the evening, and then the day's over, sort of thing.
Do most jockeys start out as exercise riders, or
Yeah,
is that how it
yeah,
works?
yeah. So, and that's a great question because um, people say, "Hey, I want to become a jockey. How do I go become a jockey?" Well, you have to become an exercise rider first because you have to require the basic skills of riding a thoroughbred and the techniques that are used and the training portion of it. And again, it's more reserved. It's completely opposite of horse racing, what the skills you would use in horse racing, which the idea is to go fast, right? Exercise riders, you have to learn how to go slow. You have to teach the horses, train the horses in a more reserved manner so they're not hurting themselves or overexpending themselves. Um, where a jockey's job is going to be completely opposite, but you still have to learn the bases. You have to learn how to ride the bike before you ride the motorcycle kind of thing.
You talk about, I think it's a good segue to what I want to talk about next, thoroughbreds, right? So there's different types of horses, right? Thoroughbreds. I was looking. There's also quarter horses, Arabian horses, and then you have just horses. If you have a farm and you have a horse, just like a workhorse, right? And those aren't considered any of those. Can you tell me, like, what is a thoroughbred horse when people say that? What is thoroughbred horsing horses?
They're probably, and I'm no expert at this, but they're probably the purest breed especially here in North America, they're probably the purest breed of any horse at this point. Though the history of the thoroughbred, the quarter horse, the Arabian, it was a mix of this and that, and I'm no expert in that, but I can tell you what I do know about the thoroughbred breed is these days, like they will not do artificial insemination. Thoroughbreds will not have any author. They have to be a purebred registered with the Jockey Club. Where quarter horse and quarter horse racing and show horses, they can do artificial insemination, which means they don't have to take the mare to that stallion. Um, there might be a mare in Kentucky and thoroughbreds, a brood mare in Kentucky. They want to breed to a stallion that's in Florida. They have to take that mare to Florida to physically breed to that stallion. Where other breeds, they don't require that. So the bloodlines are probably as pure as any breed that I know. And again, I'm no expert, but that's what I do strongly think.
I was doing a little research, and someone explained it like this, and I thought it was interesting. So the fastest horses are the quarter horses because they're strong, they accelerate quickly, they sprint. And then Arabian horses are more for endurance, so they're good for going long distances. Those are horses that are bred for that. And then the thoroughbred, they say, is a combination of those two. So they can go fast, but they can also go long.
Yeah,
The genetics part, I think it's so interesting because they say all thoroughbreds you have to trace the lineage up to like 3 horses or something like this, way back when, and every thoroughbred has to be the descendant of one of those in the lineage. It sounds like, and they guard the genetics, right? So if you have a farm, like you're a farmer in Montana with a horse, right? Your horse can be fast, right? Who knows? It could be like a really good fast horse, but it could never become a thoroughbred. The because it doesn't have the genetics,
correct.
right? It doesn't have the
Right.
paperwork in a way.
Yeah, yeah, a thoroughbred you would not be able to do that. It's not. I mean, you could race a horse against other farms and other things, but when it comes to official thoroughbred horse racing in the world, they have to be purely thoroughbred. Um, aside from those genetics that go back from the 1200s or 1500s, that for probably at least for the last 200 years, I'm going to guess that there is the thoroughbred has stuck with only thoroughbreds being bred to thoroughbreds, and they have to have that lineage and nothing else. Like they can't have a little bit of quarter horse in them. They can't have no trace whatsoever.
Right, yeah, I bet you that's why with them guarding the genetics, the genetic pool in a way, that's why they don't want to artificially inseminate them. That's is my assumption. They wanna kinda keep it pure
Pure is
and have control, of
yes,
that. Um,
but yeah, quarter horses, just a quarter horses are and they're a great breed. But they were a mixture of a couple of breeds. I think thoroughbred was one of them. But they were bred and built stocky, and they're known to have like a big rump on them, big, powerful. So and with that speed, but they're not built to go that far. So that's why they have what they call quarter horse racing, which the distances are like 440 yards, for example, opposed to a thoroughbred horse race, which can average a mile or 8 furlongs, for example, the same thing. And Kentucky Derby's a mile and a quarter, for example. You will not A quarter horse would never survive against a thoroughbred going that distance. they might beat them the first eighth of a mile or first quarter of a mile, but after that, um, you're going to get caught. And Arabians, I don't have that much experience with Arabians, but they do have Arabian racing here in America. It's not all that popular. Their distances, as far as I know, will be the same as the thoroughbreds. They're not as fast though, so the race times are much slower than the thoroughbreds. There's a movie called Hidalgo where I
Hmm.
guess they race against they run in I forget how many miles, 100 miles or something like that in the Arabian desert. It's a great movie.
Yeah, I heard there were some races in the Middle East where they have these Arabian races, and they're like long distance. They're like endurance
Yeah.
horses, you know.
Yeah, and then there's the Mongo Derby is another one, and the Gaucho Derby, which they're pretty fascinating. They're not like recognized racing, but they're these great events that go over all kinds of terrain and for miles and miles. It's pretty fascinating.
Do you have a favorite type of horse that you enjoy riding? Do you like thoroughbreds? Do you like quarter horses? Anything in particular?
Well, I've only ridden a few quarter horse races back when I was a kid. Um, so I was mainly thoroughbred. No, I was completely thoroughbred, I'll say. So that was where my experience and expertise was riding thoroughbred racehorses.
For the Kentucky Derby, right? Just because that kind of dovetails into that question. The Kentucky Derby is only thoroughbreds, right?
Correct. Correct.
What is that race? What is different about the Kentucky Derby that is different than so many other races? I mean, I think it's the biggest single race in the US. Um,
It's you know what it's the most known thoroughbred horse race, maybe the most known race in the world, just because of its history. It goes way back. In the history of thoroughbred horse racing here in America. Um, but it's attracted some of the best 3-year-olds. So the Kentucky Derby is for 3-year-olds only, and its distance in a mile and a quarter it's a very testing distance, especially for 3-year-olds because they're still young, they're still very young. Um, so mile and a quarter, 3-year-olds, and it's become so prestigious that it attracts the best horses from the world, basically. But most of them are here in the U.S. Um, and it's created a whole atmosphere of so there's derby preps and there becomes all this excitement. It's like the playoffs, right? So you have these 3-year-olds around the country that are competing in these derby with prep races. So there's the Louisiana Derby, there's the Florida Derby, there's the Santa Anita Derby. There's all these races that are scheduled prior to the Kentucky Derby, and the horses that do well in these races are prospects to be the fan favorites going into the Kentucky Derby. Um, so yeah, it's not the biggest race, but it's probably the most known and most prestigious race. And if you were to ask anybody, even people that are a jockey, a trainer, if there's any race you want to win, it's that one
mhm.
because that's a question. If you don't know anything about horse racing, you've heard of the Kentucky Derby. Or if you watch one horse race a year, it's probably the Kentucky Derby. So as a jockey, it's one of my frustrations. And my dad, when I was, it's a little, well, it's a funny story here, but when I was a kid growing up, I had so much pride in my dad as a jockey, and he was very successful. He won a lot of big races. But the question they would ask you, did you ever win the Kentucky Derby? And my as a, the pride I had in my father. No. Well, then, did he ever ride in the Kentucky Derby? And it doesn't matter how successful you are in horse racing. The answer, if it's no, they're disappointed. They're like, "Oh, you must not have been that good." So, in my career, and I had an opportunity to ride in the Kentucky Derby when I was like 18 years old, and I turned it down because it was more practical. I had a horse that could have won a big race right in New York where I was riding. And the horse that I was offered to ride in the Kentucky Derby was a very long shot. It really didn't have any chance. And I thought, I'll pass, just to say I rode the Kentucky Derby. I'll pass because I'll probably ride it next year or the year after. And that's when I broke my leg.
Oh god.
And then it was opportunities. I rode a lot of nice 3-year olds. Something always happened. Like I had one 3-year old in one of the prep races. He chipped coming out of the starting gates. He chipped a piece of his foot off. He had to go back to the farm and heal. I had another one where the trainer just decided, let's skip the Kentucky Derby. We'll run here instead. Um, I just had so many scenarios where I had that so close to ride that horse in the Kentucky Derby where I could have just easily said, "Yep, I rode it,"
I wrote it.
but I didn't. So
So now
there
you get to be
it's
like your dad in a way
yeah,
there, huh?
yep.
Aw.
Now I have 50 between his career and my career, 50 years of being a jockey. That just didn't happen. Um, but the credentials are there. You have to just get a little deeper. But Kentucky Derby is that most evasive thing for a lot of us.
So so the so it's 3-year-old the 3-year-old horses,
3-year-old, and it can be boys and girls.
boys and girls.
But most of the time it's boys. It's less likely that you'll have a nice filly that you'll want to run against the boys. It's a little bit more. The boys are a little bit tougher in most cases, but there's great races for the fillies too. So they're uh,
And a
if they
filly,
did
we should say, is a female horse,
the
right?
female horse, yeah.
Mhm.
So there is the Kentucky Oaks, for example, is like the Kentucky Derby for the fillies, the 3-year-old fillies, and that's a better option in most cases to run against those, where you have a better chance of winning, but there's been some 3-year-old fillies that have beaten the boys in the Kentucky Derby. Um, Off the top of my head, I'm thinking Genuine Risk. There's only been a handful in the last 150 some years. Uh, the
And there's
filly,
also, I think there's also, like, a lot of horses in the Kentucky. There's, like, 20 horses, right?
yeah, it's
And mo
grueling.
and 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 most races aren't like that. Is that right?
Most Kentucky Derby in North America, the Kentucky Derby is the only race that'll allow that many horses to run at one time. Um, yeah, so you'll never see that. Most racetracks, maximum fields are 14 horses in North America. You'll see other racetracks in Australia and Europe that'll run 20, 20 head of horses at a time. They're set up a little differently. Their tracks are a little different. Um, but in North America, we're not really. It's mostly for safety reasons. To run that many horses, it's just not ideal. But the Kentucky Derby, there's all these. There's an exception. There's not a starting gate. The only starting gate in North America that can hold that many horses, and they had to make a custom gate. Like, Churchill Downs for so many years, they had the main gate that only held 14, and then they had to use an auxiliary starting gate, which was attached to linked to the main gate. It was only used once a year, and finally they made a gate that'll hold all of them. So it was a little unfair to be an auxiliary gate, for example, because it puts you even further out towards the outside rail. Um, in theory, it was just not it just wasn't ideal. So, but it is the only track in North America that'll run that many and have that starting gate to do
So
it.
like, I was thinking of it, like, in a racetrack for humans, right, like the Olympics running. So it's 1 through 20. They're not staggered, right? It's not like at an angle, like, like in the Olympics, you'll have, let's say, 10 runners, and then they're kind of staggered a little more forward. I mean, when you look, it looks like it's a straight on line. It's not
Right.
angled. Uh-huh.
So yeah, so they're breaking in the straightaway, and there is a quarter of a mile run before they reach the turn. So the gate is in perfect straight, in line with the straightaway of the track. So everyone has a fair chance to f- funnel and file out as they get to that first turn and find their position. Um, they draw post positions randomly out of a basically out of a pill bottle. They put the numbers in, and that's where they have they call it the draw, and you get what you get. It's a lottery. You get stuck with whatever you get.
There's no advantage to be, because if you look at it like geometrically, the outside, like horse 20 would have to travel further than horse 1 to get to the same point. But
Well,
what do you
yeah.
say about that?
So I wonder, like, if I was to engineer that out and see, like, how many more feet does that horse have to run? It's probably, if he's gonna get to the rail. That's the whole thing with horse racing. You know, it there's an advantage of being on the outside, way on the outside, because you can more or less dictate your position as you get to that turn, where if you're breaking out of stall 1 or 2 or 3, 4 or 5, you're down on the inside, you're gonna get smothered. If you don't have enough speed or get your position, you're gonna have to basically you're gonna have to figure it out. So there's a disadvantage and an advantage no matter what you do at your post position, or what it means to your horse. If your horse is really, really fast and breaking out of post 1, that okay, so in theory, that's the shortest distance. Um, but if you use all your energy to hold that position, you're not gonna have nothing left for the end. There's just 10 zillion variables that just put the starting gate straight, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Just that is, I guess, there's so many. Just that's like another part of the puzzle, right? Uh, how your break is, I hear, where you are in the pole position, uh, the type of horse you have,
Yeah.
so much. The This year's Kentucky Derby was 2026 was pretty interesting, wasn't it?
Very,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, it was, what was the name of the horse?
Golden
Golden
Tempo.
Tempo, yeah, Golden
Yes, Golden
Tempo.
So
So, in this year's Kentucky Derby, Golden Tempo won, right?
right.
Jose Ortiz was the rider. Uh, Interesting to me was he was last of the 20
Yeah.
horses, I think, when somewhere in the race, in the beginning of the race. And then I think people love seeing a race like that. When you see a horse come from last to first.
It's
What what
exciting.
what do you think about this year's race?
So as a jockey, when you're watching a race like this, my first jockey Mike Smith, he's he's nearly my age. I'm 63. I think he's 60. A dear friend of mine, but I always root for him. He's just a great guy and a great friend. Um, so I was watching him, and they break out of the gates. They hit the first turn, and the first quarter fractions, I think, were 22 and change, which is 22 seconds and I don't know, 2/5 seconds. I don't know exactly. I don't remember exactly what it was, but that's fast. And Mike was laying just off the pace, and it made me worry. Like, I don't know if he's going to be able to last. Um, so the fractions of a race really do set up what's going to happen towards the end. Um, Horses, I mean, Secretariat still holds the track record for the Kentucky Derby, which is incredible. I think it was a minute and 59 seconds, something like that. And it's been it horses can only even the greatest horses can only go so fast. And if the fractions are that fast, for them to continue, there's a very good chance there's somebody behind them that's going to make up that ground. So it sets it up for a horse like that, Golden Tempo, to make that run, whatever position. But in this case, he was last, and it's very, very exciting to see him circle the field. Well, he had to filter through a couple of tired horses around the turn, and then turn for home. He still didn't look like he could get there to win. Um, yeah, so it was very exciting. And of course, a safe race is always a good race. But and then his brother, his older brother was in front, um, and they end up finishing first and second, which is, it's a beautiful story. What can you say?
Yeah, that was a great story. And then Sherry, is it DeVoe? Sherry DeVoe, I think.
The trainer,
The
yeah,
trainer, she's the first she trained the horse. She was the first female trainer to have won the Kentucky Derby, I heard.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, again, it's like, the Kentucky Derby is like it's like winning the lottery. It's having the right horse at the right time and then having all the luck go your way. Um, so, congratulations to her. Catching lightning in a bottle. Winning Kentucky Derby is catching lightning in a bottle. Um, I know, I think it was Lafitte Pincay, like, one of the greatest jockeys in history. He's won everything, and I think it took him 20 some tries to finally win a Kentucky Derby. So he was fortunate enough. He was such a popular jockey that everybody wanted him to ride their horse in the Kentucky Derby. So he
Uh,
always participated, but he never. It was so he couldn't win it, and he finally did win it. And there's a funny clip that he's from Panama. He's a very quiet, reserved guy, very very classy, kind person. Um, but there was a clip with him, and he said, in his broken English, he said, "I never asked God for any help to win a race." He says, "But this time," he said, "God, just give me a little push." And he won that
and he won
year.
it. Yeah.
He said, "God, just give me a little push."
Just a little
Just a little
push, yeah.
push. He wanted
I
before
never
he retired, he wanted to win. He wanted to win that race so bad.
Wa Wow, that's funny. There's other races, right? There's for people that are learning about horse racing. So there's the Kentucky Derby, but there's the Triple Crown, and there's the
Right.
Breeders' Cup in the US. Those are like other
Yeah.
big
S-
races.
So the 3-year-old. So we have the Kentucky Derby, like I mentioned, is like the most famous. And then there was this became a thing. It's not an official thing, but the Triple Crown, which consists of the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness Stakes, and the Belmont Stakes. These were, they were never intended to be linked together. It just became a thing with the fans or from the turf riders. And this is like, I was going back in history, like what makes the Triple Crown? And it was just something that was invented from the turf riders and the fans because, okay, this horse won there, but then they go on to win this other 3-year-old race. Again, Preakness is restricted to the same 3-year-old boys and girls that can participate. Um, and then, there's this other big race, and it just became a thing. And then it became a bigger thing when a horse would win all three of those. It became Triple Crown. So it became it manifested into its own like giant event, but they aren't the biggest races in America. They're just the most well known. And now you mentioned the Breeders' Cup, which is something started in the mid '80s, which is like the World Series of horse racing. So Breeders' Cup, for example, um, it was a group of guys that got together and they said, what if we had like a giant day in racing? We'd offer the biggest purses of the year for every category of horse. So it's the 3 and older category. It's the straight 3-year-olds. It's the boys. It's the girls. It's the turf. It's the dirt. It's the sprint. It's the marathon. Those categories, and we'll have a day that'll just that will just it'll be like crazy. And that's what the Breeders' Cup is. It started back in the I think it was '86. I'm not positive. um 1986, and it's a very big day in racing, and they attract horses from all over the world, and it's really it's a great thing.
Some of these horses, yeah, I was learning that they can compete, like you say, in the US. I mean, I assume they're trucking them maybe to,
Airplanes and trucks and
yeah, airplanes.
yeah,
So they fly them too. Like
yeah,
they have horses that come in for like the Breeders' Cup. You get horses from Europe or from the Middle East. They'll fly
yeah.
them over and they'll race them.
Yeah, Australia, Japan. Yeah. Yeah, so it's not, you know, that's a very like there's a lot that goes behind that. So let's say you have a champion horse in Japan and you want to bring it for the Breeders' Cup. First, they have to be nominated. They have to go through the process, and that's a whole other can of worms. And I won't know all the technical parts of that. But if they're Breeders' Cup eligible, there's an entry fee. They would have to make arrangements to bring them to America. They would be under quarantine, and they would have to acclimate. So if a horse is coming from Europe or Japan, and because there's so much money involved, there's a good chance that these owners and trainers will make the arrangements to get the horse here maybe a month before the Breeders' Cup would ever run. They would have to be under quarantine situation, and but they'd have to get acclimated to that track, the atmosphere, all that stuff. That anything that would not cause a disadvantage for them to participate and perform at their best. So there's a whole process behind it.
Do they bring, like, I think Saudi, the king has a bunch of horses. Do they bring their own jockeys also, or do they have, like, Americans ride 'em?
A little bit of both. Most of the time they choose their American jockeys, and only because they know, like they feel like they have an advantage using the American jockeys. Uh, One thing is they are more appealing, and they know the tracks. They know the whole. They got a better feel for the whole situation. They're coming to their hometown. They're going to pick the best American jockeys in most cases. Europe does use a lot of their own jockeys, and I could see that. But you mentioned Saudi Arabia. They will mostly use the American jockeys.
There's also other big races in the world. I think the biggest one in Europe is the one in Paris. Is it called Prix de Arc de Triomphe?
The Arc de Triomphe, yeah. That and the Epsom Derby are the two races that I know of.
Epsom is in
Um,
the UK.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So and anything that says Derby or Derby, they say Derby, we say Derby, are for 3-year-olds. The Arc de Triomphe, I'm not sure. I think that's for older horses. I'm not positive. Don't quote me on that. But those are two famous races, historical races that have run in Europe, that I know of.
Now, these are three-year-old horses that race in these specific races. I learned something, and I was hoping you could comment on it. So, in a human, when you're a teenager, you're like really strong. Your 20s, you're really strong, and then as you get older, perhaps you're not as strong. Um, so like a 4 or 5 or 6-year-old horse can actually be stronger than a 3-year-old. Is that right? Like they're not at their peak at three. Some people may think, oh, they do 3-year-old horses because they're probably at their peak. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, and that's going to be a case by case situation. Every horse is going to be different, but I'll say the average thoroughbred probably peaks at 4 to 5, somewhere in that area. Um, and it's some of its physicality, some of its maturity. They kind of as young horses, depending on how much they race, they once they kind of know their job, and they can in some ways they can perform better. 3-year-olds are still kind of finding their way. Um, it's all horses in thoroughbred racing turn a year older January 1st. So there's some 3-year-olds that are still very immature and others that are, depending on when they were born, actually born, that may be more mature. But I think they hit their best stride when they're mature and physically uh, matured. But then you also have to deal with it can get complicated. Like a 4-year-old could begin to sour or could have developed some physical issues, um, and may not run as fast as they could when they were 3. So there's so many different things that could change um, where they're at their best. But if I was to say on a consensus that probably a 4-year-old is probably where they're going to be at their best.
So, I wanted to talk about becoming a jockey and talk about the subject of jockeying. So, I think you talked a little bit about what it takes to become a jockey. Sounds like you have to maybe get uh, on a
Farm,
farm,
yeah.
exercise horsing, you become good enough, and then you become a jockey. Can you talk about how someone becomes a jockey, and then like how competitive it is to actually do that?
Yeah. So first, I'll lay it out this way that um, probably the average jockey lasts for 3 years, and that's just that's not scientific. It's my theory is the average jockey only lasts for about 3 years, and the reasons why what it takes to be a jockey is one, you have to basically be fearless. Um, Two, you have to be good at it to get the opportunities. You have to be a good rider for a trainer to want to decide to use you to ride their horse. And then three, you have to make the weights. And then maybe four, you have to get lucky on top of all that. But most reasons why a rider will only last 3 years is because it is so hard. Um, it's so competitive. Uh, it is so dangerous. So sometimes you might have all the other ingredients, um, but you get hurt, and then you can't make a comeback, or you physically can't make a comeback. But you get hurt. Maybe you lose a little bit of you have fear issues, um, and then maybe you outgrow the job. Maybe as a jockey, you have to be somewhere around 110 to 115 pounds. You know, maybe you can't make the weights anymore. So all those things are critical, along with needing to be a very competitive type type job, but lucky. You have to be lucky. You could have all the things and just not have good luck. You may be a trainer as a jockey. You ride your first couple of races. The horses didn't do well, and trainers are just like, I have so many other options. You know, so it's really really tricky for me. Like I mentioned, I went to work on a farm. I learned how to be an exercise rider on the farm, which you would have to do before you were even to become an exercise rider on the track. You have to develop these skills to know that you can keep yourself and other people safe and the horse. Um, you have to go to a track. You have to get approved through the racing commission, the stewards, the outriders. They'll have to watch you ride. You have to have a trainer that'll be willing to put you on a horse on the racetrack, and then from there, um, if you're going to, if you're like, if you're able to become a jockey, able to make the weights, all those other things I mentioned, you have to have a trainer that's going to be willing to give you a chance. Um, you have to be approved to break out of the starting gates. You have to be able to prove that you're able to do the skills of a jockey. Um, and one of the most horrifying things is being an experienced jockey is riding against a jockey that has no experience.
Oh, yeah, you get
Because
scared.
well, you get like you get scared for them, and they make dumb mistakes, and it's very dangerous out there. There's so many things about riding in a race. You have to be able to judge your distance between the horse in front of you, because we have a thing called clipping heels, which if you get too close to the horse in front of you, your front legs, if they hit the horse's hind legs in front of you, it's an instant fall. It's and they don't always make the best decisions. They may take a turn too sharp. Everything has to be done. Um, you know, imagine NASCAR. You know, like you're going down a track. The slightest move, this turn of the wheel, can wipe another guy out. So it's kind of like that. You just have to, you know, everything has to be very controlled, along with trying to do the best for your horse and win that race. And then, you know, apprentice jockeys, they're dealing well, I'll say an inexperienced apprentice jockey riding their first race or two at a time. They're hard. They're already like, you know, their whole life is they worked for this moment, and they're scared. Not scared of the horse or the race. They're just nervous. It's like going on stage, and and so they'll make some of the dumbest mistakes, and it could be very, very dangerous. So it's challenging.
Yeah, I recently went to a horse race here in town, and, I don't really go that often, but I didn't know, but, there was a, ambulance that goes behind the
Yes.
race in
Yeah.
case anyone falls off, I assume, gets hurt. So it's a very dangerous sport, right? I mean, you have a jockey that's, let's say, 110, 115 pounds. The horses weigh, what, like 1,000 plus pounds, something
Yeah.
like this?
On average, yeah.
I mean, you broke was it your femur
Yeah.
when you fell off of the horse? It's a very dangerous sport.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a funny thing. I'm a bit sarcastic when someone asks me, "Did you ever fall off a horse before?" And I say, "No, no, I never fell off a horse." It's like it's part of the business. It's just it's part of it. Yeah, if you ride a few thousand races, there's a chance that you're gonna have a couple of crashes. And then the other funny part is it's not funny, but falling off, you don't just fall off. Something happens. It's a crash. If you're flying on an airplane crashes, you don't say I fell out of the airplane. Right? But yeah, there's a reason why you crashed and burned, and it's not because you fell out of the airplane or fell off the horse. Yeah, that's kind of funny.
Is what's the culture like as amongst jockeys, right? So it's very competitive. Everyone uh is trying to ride the best horse they can, I assume. What is it competitive? Is it
Well,
collegial? What is it like?
it's a little combination of like as I mentioned, when you're on the track, you're not only your life is in your hands, but of your peers and your competitors. It's the only sport that everyone on the playing field is against each other. Yeah, that's I've heard that said. And that's true. It's the only sport where everybody on the playing field is on a different team. But when we're out there, a wrong move can hurt somebody or kill somebody for that matter. So we take that into an account, a very strong account. And there's some competitiveness, but there's also there's some collegiate. There's friendly competition. There's passionate. Like I had some of the friends in the jocks room were some of my best friends, and then others, not so much. And a guy like if a guy does you wrong in this race, hey buddy, with the next race, so there isn't a lot of that. It happens, yes, but there's not a lot of it because the tables can be turned in the very next race. And in the course of a race day, there could be 9 to 11 races on average. Um, but yeah, buddy, you cut me off in the sixth race. Um, the seventh and eighth race is coming up, or tomorrow there's going to be another series of races. So there's that part of it. But in most cases, like I got along with everybody, and some of the guys I rode with were some of my best friends and still are. Yeah.
I was looking online. How much do jockeys get paid? Right? I want to talk about the salary. Yeah,
Another
this
great
is
question.
yeah,
So
because some people are like, "Oh, you're winning the Kentucky Derby, you're making a killing." Tell me about that.
so during my career, especially during the early part of my career, you'll find this fascinating. But the Kentucky Derby mentioned it was the most prestigious race, but the purse was only 100,000 back in the late '70s and the early '80s. $100,000. There's much bigger races all over the country. Um, if you won it, the winning jockey would get. It's going to be complicated. The winning owner gets 10% or 60% of the purse. The jockey would get 10% of that 60%. So to rough that down, if you won the Kentucky Derby back in 1980, you would have got $6,000, and you would split that up with your agent gets 25%, and you have a wood car valet that takes care of our equipment gets another 5 to 10% of that back in those days. Nowadays, the Kentucky Derby's become so commercialized that there's sponsors and things. Now I don't even know what the purse is, and it makes me crazy that the I think it might be a $3 million race now, just because of the commercialization of it, which is great for racing. Everybody deserves and needs all the money they can get in this business. So if you were able to knock out one of those babies, fantastic. But back in the day, I mentioned the winning jockey when I was starting out. The winning jockey would say got 6,000. Guess what? The second jockey would get
How much?
$55. $55.
$55. That's it.
If you win, you get 6,000. If you were second, you got $55. And if you're third, $45. And then if you were third on down, you got $35. Or no, fourth on down, you got $35. And that was the flat jockey rate. So any race that you rode in America back in the early 80s, it was $35. Basically, you got paid. And you would split that up with your agent.
Wow.
So I think it was like $17 to ride. You got paid to just ride a race. Nowadays, they've restructured it. They made it a bit more fair. I finished second in a $500,000 race. It was one of the biggest races in North America at the time. It was called the Jockey Club Gold Cup. The purse was $500,000. One of the biggest purses in the world at the time. I finished second. If I'd have won it, I'd have made $33,000. I finished second. I made $55, and
$55.
I got beat that far. So they've since changed it. Now that they've changed in North America, they have a different pay scale. We had to actually jockeys had to go on strike to make this happen, and to get the horsemen and the racing commissions to agree with it. But now we get paid 10, 5, and 5, which means 10% for whatever the owner, 10% of the 60% like we did before. And then for second, we get 5% of what the owner of that horse would get. So the breakdown, it's going to be complicated. Let's go by the winning owner. Winning owner on an average racetrack in North America, 60% of the purse, the winning owner. Second place, I think it's like 22%. Third place might be 11%. Fourth place might be 5 or 4%. I don't know. But the jockey would get 10% of that 60%, 5% of that 20%, and 5% of that 11%. So it still trickles down, but at least you get a ham sandwich for finishing second these days.
They give you breakfast.
You could take your girl on a date or something. I don't know.
Now, when you talk about a purse, what is like a purse? I assume it means the amount of money that people bet. Is it
No,
like it's not? So it's not how much people bet.
No, not at all. In fact, yeah, it has nothing to do with the betting side of it. Though, if what they call the handle, and I'm not an expert at this, but if a racetrack has a high handle, all their purses will be according to their handle. It's a structure, and the purses are according to the category of horse. So there's all different categories, not just boys and girls. It gets really, really complicated. It gets, you get to sprinters, you get to going turf racing, you get to going long and short distances. There's something. So when horses, if they've never won a race before, they run in a maiden race, and they have an option to run what they call a maiden allowance, which is going to be the best of the maidens, and then there's going to be maiden claiming. Claiming is when a horse is for sale in a race. So if they're in a claiming, they're usually not there. And there's different levels of claiming. It could be New York has high levels of claiming. Let's say $35,000, $25,000. There's different ranks of claiming races.
And claiming, for those that don't know, I don't know much about it, but it's something like, I want to race my horse and anybody can buy it at the end. Is that
not anybody?
Okay.
But yes, your horse is for sale. If you put him in a claiming race, your horse is for sale. To be eligible to claim a horse, you have to be. I think you have to be depending. Every state's going to be a little different. You have to be licensed in that state, and you have to have had run a horse in the last meet, or there's all these different things. Not just anybody can go there and write a check. So there's all this different the procedure and criteria in order to do it. But active trainers and owners on the grounds, they're always willing to deal. And they're like, you put a horse in for let's say a 25,000 claiming race, it's for sale. I like that horse. I'm going to buy it. And the whole process, it's really, really it's kind of cool. It's got to be nerve wracking too, but it's all done in secret. And you can't put in, there's a claiming slip. You have to put in, like, once the horse is saddled and the horses are worn out on the track. And then once it's post time, that window closes. And once the horse breaks out of the gate, no matter what happens, that horse is yours. So
Oh.
it could fall down, it could jump over the infield, it could, whatever happens, that horse belongs to you. And then there's times when there'll be several claims in for the same horse, and then they call shake for it, which means they put things in a pill bottle and they pull out names, or to see who the winner of that claim would be. But it's quite a game in itself, the claiming game. And
I guess
yeah,
you're claiming that horse. That's kinda why it's called you're
yeah,
claiming it. Is that
yeah,
okay, yeah, I see.
yeah. And that horse, after that race, goes back to your barn. And then that trainer it owns it. That trainer is now in charge of that horse, and or with that owner. Same scenario with, there's owners and trainers, and sometimes trainers can own horses, but in most cases, that horse is going back to that trainer's barn. It could be very awkward when someone gets mad at you for claiming their horse. It happens so often that there's a lot of competition there too, and a guy might claim your horse that's in the barn right next to you. So,
Oh.
like, that was my horse. You took my horse, you son of a gun. But the claiming thing is, because if a horse can't, here's an example: horse can't win for 25,000 claiming. He's running 25,000 claiming, so you can drop him to a 15,000 claiming. That makes him cheaper. In theory, the category is a little softer now. It gives them a better chance to win, to make money. So that's the challenge, right? You have a horse. I can't make any money running for 25,000, but I don't want to sell. I don't want to put him in a claim for 15, but I have to take this chance now because we need to make some money with this horse. So you're taking the risk of him getting sold, and going off to another barn. And then, to make it more complicated, that trainer that has him now maybe does better with this horse, and it makes the other trainer look completely bad. Sometimes it's just because I don't know. Um, but it makes the other trainer look really, really bad if another trainer claims a horse and does better with it. Maybe goes up the claiming ranks and starts running for 50,000 claiming, and then up to the allowance categories, and maybe even stakes races. That's happened. That's happened. There's so many scenarios. But yeah, so there's all these different categories. Um, and that's what makes up the purse. Those categories, they establish what a purse would be for those categories of horses. And so it's all structured. There's a thing called a condition book that is it's printed and put out to the trainers and jockey agents, and it's basically a bible. It's like a script of what the races will be on all these certain days. And so a trainer will open up this condition book and say, okay, today's the 27th. There's a race for this horse that I have for June 18th, and I'm going to prepare him for this race, even though he's fit and trained, he's ready. Um, but I'm gonna back off his training because I don't want him too. I want him fresher for this race because there's only going to be 6 furlongs. There's so many variables, and the condition book, trainer will pick horses, races for their horses. The purses are there. The weight assignments are in there. They pick their jockeys. A lot of times, trainers will stick with the same jockeys. Um, Jockeys get hired and fired like almost every race, but there are times when he's not satisfied with this jockey with that horse, and the condition book, he's going to use this jockey for that race, and he has to reach out to that jockey agent, make sure he's available. Then they secure that like a verbal contract for that race for that horse and that day.
So do jockeys make their money on volume, right? Like if they don't, do
No,
they know how to, it's like how much are we talking? Like some kid listening, I'm gonna be a jockey one day, I'm gonna make millions. Um what
winning,
winning? So you
winning.
if you so give me an elite jockey, how much an elite jockey can make, and then like your most like your average jockey.
So the average jockey makes less than minimum wage. The average jockey makes less than minimum wage, and and well, you've heard like the K-shaped economy. It kind of is like that. The top, let's say the top 20 jockeys in America do really really well, and then there's the other 90%. Maybe there's like 40% of them make a living, and then the other 30% are paycheck to paycheck, starving to death, maybe exercising horses on top of trying to ride races to make their car payment. So it really falls off quickly. And in fact, some jockeys will opt to just become an exercise rider because they can make more money. It's more of a secured situation. They can make a paycheck opposed to trying to ride races and only making. So I mentioned you got $35 just to ride a race. Well, now it's like 50. It's somewhere between 50 and $100 to ride a race. But if you're only riding 3-4 races a week and you're not winning, you're better off taking a job that you can make a paycheck. So it's tough. It's really really tough. But when those top tier jockeys, the purses, as I mentioned, the Kentucky Derby when I was starting out was only $100,000 race, and it's now a $3 million race. Um, and one of my pet peeves is when they talk about jockeys' earnings. Um, they talk about when you hear a jockey has made, like, I don't know, I don't even know what my earnings were, but they're based off what the horses I rode earned, not my earnings. So it might be, I don't know, 28 million. Those aren't my earnings. I made 10% of 60% of, and then 5% of the 30%, and then $35. Uh, so it doesn't. It really is not fair. But nowadays, a race that was only worth, when I was at the prime of my career, a race that was a $20,000 purse is now like a $60,000 purse. So the top jockeys that are winning these races are making 10 times what I was making when I was doing really, really well. But the rest of them still doing like, just getting by. Maybe,
Still getting by.
maybe they get lucky. Yeah, win a big race. That's going to help. But you got to win those races, and if you're not winning races, you won't even get the opportunities to do it. And you won't get the good horses. That's the other thing. It's a catch-22. When you're doing well and you're winning races, you get the good horses thrown to you, and when you're not, you get nothing but the bad. There's no bad horses, but the slow ones. You'll get the ones that don't have much chance, and it's one of my other things that people say to me. I was a great long shot rider, um, and that was because that's all I rode. That was the joke. Um,
Oh, that's all you.
but my later career, when I went from being on top of the world, and I had that injury, like I mentioned, I never really fully recovered. I did okay, but I had some years, that's all I rode was long shots. So, and I did well with them. Would I prefer to be a long shot rider? No, I want to be a. Give me the gravy, man. It's easy. Makes my job so much easier. You just kind of you ride the good horses, man. You ride along, hang on there, and win. The slow ones. It's hard to win races on slow horses.
It almost sounds like if you think of a hill, you're either on the one side or the other. It's if you're on this side of the mountain, the hill, it's all uphill. It's a lot of energy. But once you get over it, it's you get the
Yeah.
better horses, right? It's easier to win. That sounds
Yeah.
so interesting.
It's exactly, exactly.
What makes a great jockey, like Hall of Fame type jockey, versus just an average jockey?
I think
What? Mm-hmm.
luck and persistence. That's luck and persistence. Of course, those other things I mentioned earlier about, okay, fearless, make the weights, uh, just the rest is persistence and luck. Like as far as what are the attributes to be a great jockey? Um, I mean, there would be, of course, you have to be very athletic. You have to be very good with horses. You have to communicate well with them and be good at positioning. Um, and a lot of that's not always in your control. Like a good horse, a fast horse, having the best horses, it's really easy to win. You can make mistakes and win with them, kind of thing. Um, but the attributes of a good jockey, I just think go along with just being able to be persistent and be lucky. But I was, I was a good rider. I was a good passenger. I worked to communicate with the horse. I worked to work with the trainers. Like I mentioned morning workouts. During training is in the morning, races in the afternoon. During the training, they would use jockeys a lot for these important workouts. And some trainers are very, very critical on how they want that horse worked out. So I'll give you an example. A pretty standard example is a trainer might say, "I want you to work a half mile." So working a half mile is setting this horse down from an easy gallop to a full run for a half a mile distance. And they may say, "I want you to go in 49 seconds." So
That's fast.
yeah, that's medium. That's more a racing half mile might be 46 to 47, 48, somewhere in there. 49 is a decent pace, but you have to calculate how fast you're going. You have to be able to feel that horse. You have to manage that horse. Not they're not all push buttons. Some want to go way too fast too soon. Some don't want to go at all. Some you have to um, hope that you get them to finish. You want them to go faster at the end of the workout than the beginning. So it's all calculated, and you are the engineer, and you're managing 1,000 pounds horse, and uh, and you don't know every horse is going to be a little different. You have to be able to take all these into consideration. The trainer's going to expect you to go in 49 seconds. You go in 50 seconds, that's 1 second. Too slow. You go in 48 seconds, that's too fast. That's 1 second. You have to be able to know what you're doing. And I was really good. I was very good at that.
Were they testing the jockey when they did
No,
that, or are
no.
they just seeing if what were they doing? Why 49?
It's
If
because it's all conditioning of the horse. If it's for a certain race, and in the example, half a mile in 49 seconds, Um, it may be because we got a race coming up in 5 days. I don't want them to do too much, but they need to do enough to get their lungs filmed to get them ready for this race. Um, so 50 might be too slow. They may not get the workout that they think they needed. 48 seconds, a second faster than 49, might be too much. You might have just took the wind out of their sails. It might have take the edge off them. I need them to be fresher. So it's that critical when you get to at that level of horse racing, working with trainers, working with jockeys, it gets when you get to that level, that's it's how complicated it can be, and you have to be good at it.
so, I was reading some jockeys can ride into their 70s, right? I mean,
It's rare.
extremely rare, right? But if someone hears that, they think, like in the NBA, NFL, soccer, you have to, it's all about like your optimum physical capacity. And how can you be an elite jocker at 70, right? Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Sure. Like, I retired at 42 from racing. I retired as a professional jockey at 42. And why? There was a couple of reasons. One, I was racing against kids that are half my, like 20 years old, half my age. Um, and, uh, and the other one, I was not, I wasn't getting the opportunities because they had that, they can get this kid like bouncing around, and here I'm more accomplished, more knowledgeable, but I'm a little bit, yeah, I'm not the new thing on the block for one thing, um, but I'm also very wise, and trainers they're probably looking for a little more like somebody that's willing to do anything kind of thing. I'd be honest.
The risk
um,
taker.
yeah, that is a bit of a there's a bit of truth to that, but it's also a bit of a stereotype. Um, it's, and then there's one of my favorite. Again, I'm going to quote another jockey, another interview with a great jockey. His name was Angel Cordero, and I was with him while he was doing this interview on NBC, and they asked him this question, like, because he was getting in his older years, and they're like, "So, as an athlete, what's the first thing it goes for a jockey? Is it your knees? Is it your back? And is it without even hesitating, says it's your clients."
Your client.
Your clients, your owners, your trainers. It's those are the first things to go, and that's when it tells you like, the reward is not so much worth the risk anymore. But for me, yeah, I had something going for me. I had the Equisizer business that was just waiting for me to dive into it, and I was at the time I was racing. My home was New York, Long Island, New York, close to Belmont Park, and my family's there. But I had opportunities to ride for some big stables in Chicago and New Orleans, and so that's where I was spending the last few years of my career, and it was time. I was, and then physically, I was not blessed. I was not blessed with natural lightweight. So I had to fight and maintain my weight constantly. That was very taxing. Um, that not most jockeys have to do what I had to do to make my weights. So I had that to deal with.
So you had a successful career. Um, you won you've won awards, you've won several races, you've raced thousands of times. If you could relive one day from your career,
I probably would have rode that horse in the Kentucky Derby.
and
That's funny.
yeah, you would have raced that horse. How about, but let's take a race perhaps that you did race.
Well, probably the biggest disappointment. I mentioned that big race that I got beat in nose. It was against a horse named John Henry, and I was riding a long shot in the race, but I really liked my chances. Um, and I thought I had the race won, and it was such a tease, and I'll tell you why. As a jockey, I mean, maybe not every jockey, but myself, I had it measured. I came from last. I was far, far behind the field of horses. And this race, the Jockey Club Gold Cup, is a mile and a half, so it's even longer than Derby. It's Belmont Park. It's one of the most prestigious races in thoroughbred horse racing. If I'd have won that race, it'd have been like winning the Kentucky Derby as a career as a jockey. I think I'm 17, 18 years old. Um, I think I'm 18. I'll just say I'm 18 years old. Turning for home, uh, the whole field is in front of me, and my horse, which I know so well, kicks in, and I'm like, I got this. And I'm weaving through traffic, and just John Henry was the favorite with the famous Bill Shoemaker. he's in about, we'll call it the 6th to 8th path. So he's wide in the middle of the track. I had plenty of room. I filtered through this whole field of horses, and I had one horse left measured. I got this. And as a jockey, I was just like, man, this is going to be so great. And as I started getting close to him, now still I came from last, so he's still quite a bit in front of me. He switches his whip to his right hand, and he starts to angle down to my lane. So I follow him in. And as I follow him in, it starts to get a little tight. Now we're getting closer to the rail. My horse does it like he runs, so he's running and he's being competitive. His ears are back and he's really into it. He does this, like, uh-oh.
Opens his eyes.
He hesitates. And then there's where the starting gate was placed, the rake marks. With the tires of the starting gate gets moved. The starting gate and the ground crew use rakes and rake it out. He saw that and he hesitated again. So he hesitated from the other horse moving down towards him, and then he saw those rake marks and he hesitated again. And we get to the finish line, and I was like, oh my God, I think I got beat. Now my horse had so much momentum. The two strides after the race, I'm now several lengths in front. I'm just that much right after the finish line. I'm several lengths in front, and there's the whole crew on that side of the finish line that are congratulating me. Congrats, Frankie, you got it, you did it. And then I started thinking maybe I did win it, but I felt like I got beat. Like it was close. I'm on a big horse. My horse is 17 hands tall. John Henry is not that big. Maybe I did win it. And so then I get my horse pulled up, and I come back and I didn't. I didn't win. I got beat that nose, and that's something that still haunts me. It was so close, and again, I'm only a punk kid. Like I'm 18 years old, and so I'm like, there's going to be plenty more of this. And I never had those types of opportunities. I had some good ones. I mean, I did win some big races, but that one could have changed everything in my career. And then it was that very same horse. His name was Pete Moss, and he's a New York favorite still to this day. Of some of the old fans that will remember him. He was a great marathon runner. He loved to run long distances, and so there was 2 weeks later. We won a back-to-back stakes race called the Kelso. It was a great stakes race, and so we won that easily. And then it was just a few days later is when I broke my leg. And so yeah, it was. If I could relive all those days, I wish I could go back to that race, and maybe something I could have done different. But having that feeling of I got this to like it didn't happen was probably the biggest disappointment in my life. So
I don't know if you've heard that they've done studies on like Olympic winners, right? And they show the faces of first place winners gold, right? And they're smiling, they're happy. They show the faces of second place winners, and they look like just torn up, right? They're just trying to smile. They got second, right?
Yeah.
Second. And they look at the third place, and that person is just beaming, right?
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the third place thinks, I placed.
Yeah.
Right. Second is like, I almost won.
Yes.
Oh, God.
It was there. Yeah. It was one away from being so yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. Sometimes it's better finishing third
Than second.
than second. And there is a saying in horse racing, like second's the worst place to finish. Not only because it's not just finishing second, but that's where the owners and trainers think, what if? And that's when they fire the jockey. They won't fire the jockey for finishing third. They'll fire the jockey for finishing second
Really?
because it's just like, man, what if? What if we had this other jockey, or well, what if he did this, or what if he did that? And
Did
and the
you
jo-
have a? Do you have a? Do you have a? Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, and for your listeners, if anybody's still interested, jockeys only make up a small percentage. Like my theory is the horse is 90 to 95% of it. To win, you have to have the horse, and the jockey's only a small part of it. Um, so that was my next point is jockeys, and no matter what in the history of horse racing, it's still the jockey's fault when it's all over.
Never the horse. Yeah.
It's never the horse.
With that story, do you have a story like your favorite win? The maybe a race that you had that you still remember with glee, with happiness.
Oh man, there's several. There's so many, but I'll just pop up. We were talking about the Derby, and so when I was a kid, I started racing. I rode a few races in Florida and New York, but I actually started riding consistently. My boss at the time sent me to Ohio, and I started just winning races like crazy. It was ridiculous. Talk about the luck factor. And then I was winning 9, 10 races a week, which is a lot. I mean, on that pace, you're the leading rider in North America by far. Races win. uh, but I ended up in New Orleans, and then they sent me back to New York, and I'm rolling. I'm winning races. I'm in the top in America. Races won as an apprentice. I think I was like sixth or seventh, and as leading jockeys, races won in America. And there's all these uh, famous jockeys. There's Chris McCarron, Angel Cordero, Liffey Pinkai, all these jockeys that I just worship. And then there's my name. So, um, but now I'm in New York, and now I have to break into the big riding with the big boys, and and I remember they sent me to Finger Lakes to ride the New York Derby on a horse, and I won it, and I was like, I finally like I won a Derby. I'm only 17, but that was my first Derby. So there's other derbies besides the Kentucky Derby, but I won a Derby already. Like I was like, yeah. So that was like that. I felt like that was different than all the other success at that time. I felt like I won a Derby, and I'm just a kid. I'm just an apprentice, and so yeah, that was a very big moment for me. Um, just thinking, just with the name Derby next to it. Now and it wasn't a big race. It was a big race for me. It was my
Yeah,
first.
when that kid asks you, you can say, "Well, I won a derby.
Yeah, that's right.
I
Yeah,
won a derby."
be more specific. Be like, I've won several derbies now. Be more specific.
Yeah.
But it's just not that Kentucky Derby. That's actually funny. I should use that.
Yeah. I have it. No, but I have won a derby. I'm like,
I wouldn't be lying. I won the Derby. That's
uh,
great.
what is in regards to horse racing? It's a very beloved sport. Those that are in it, there's so many aspects of it. People love it. A lot of money spent on it, highs and lows. Um, what is something beautiful about horse racing that outsiders rarely see?
Oh, I would say, horse racing does get a bad rap. There's activists against it, animal rights activists. Some people think it's cruel. The fans are fantastic. Like the hardcore fans, I would not see eye to eye with them because they're on the gambling aspect of it, um, I'm on the horse side of it. But I do enjoy it. I do like. I'm fascinated by people. They're hardcore fans. I mean, just like they would be for baseball or football, and die hard. So that's pretty neat. But the thing that I think with some of the reputation the horse racing gets, if you were to see the relationship between the grooms and their horses, in most cases, those are their babies, and it's beautiful the care that these horses get, the love that they get, and yeah, I think that's something that people don't see. That the relationship between a groom and a horse is very it's very close and it's touching. It's nice. It's nice to see that love.
Well, Mr. Lovato, thank you so much for being with me today. I truly enjoyed it. I learned quite a bit, and I, I wish you all the best of luck with your company, and thank you for being an educator. When I reached out and I was looking for someone to talk to about horse racing, a lot of people put your name out there. They said he's knowledgeable, he's a great educator, and, thank you for sharing what you know, and thank you for spending this time with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for the kind words. And if you have a question about horse racing or any of your listeners, you can give me a call.